There are large-scale protests that have been taking place in the country after a 22-year-old, Mahsa Amini, died after she was arrested by Iran's morality police. She was detained after the police reportedly found fault with the way she had tied her hijab. She slipped into a coma and passed away at the hospital. The police say she suffered from a heart attack while in custody, but reports are emerging which say that she was beaten. This has sparked outrage not only from Iran but from across the world. During the protests, women removed their hijab and some even burned them. The protests of women by women in the country of Iran against hijab are not new. For decades, the educated, liberated Iranian women have been saying that give us the choice to choose between hijab. If you visit the country of Iran, it's mandatory that you cover your head. There is a scarf or the hijab that you have to tie around your hair. On the streets of Iran, in various cities, in Tehran and in other places, there's also morality police which stands there, which sees whether you've tied your hijab properly or not. And if not, you could be fined and arrested. Iranian women, if you look at the demography of Iran, are highly educated, highly qualified. They participate in all the spheres of the professional and public life, whichever is permitted under the Islamic Republic of Iran. But they have repeatedly asserted their freedom to choose whether they want to tie the hijab or they don't want to tie the hijab. This entire issue, of course, has been deeply political and was also tied to the entire green movement or the pro-democratic protests that we have seen in Iran in the last 1 decade. Abhishek Jha, my colleague with us on the broadcast. Abhishek, not the first time that women are protesting against mandatory hijab. However, the present unfortunate incident has once again kicked off large-scale protests.
Of course, and this is not the first time, and it will probably never be the first time. Last time when these women would like to talk about the equality in the society. And we know that in the sporadic events in the past also, there has been multiple incidences where women have come out in solidarity and in collective way of protesting the hijab, which has been imposed upon them by a constitutional way. There is a parliamentary mandate that calls that women should be dressed decently, and if they violate that, they will be inviting punishment that could be in lashes, that could be behind putting them behind the bars, or that is also they may also have to be paying a lot of a huge sum of money for the kind of constitutionally asked sin that they had committed. So this is the kind of societal structure that has been created in Iran. But over the last few years, we have seen various incidences where there has been outrage. There has been this protest about from women's side that they do want to make this hijab not a mandatory,
but something that they can choose from, Abhishek. And, that's what the entire debate has been about. I'll come back to you, Abhishek. Brinda Adige, who's an activist, is also joining us on the broadcast. Brindaji, Iranian women, unlike what a stereotypical woman, the image of a woman clad in a hijab or a chador would be, are highly educated, professionally qualified women. And in the country of Iran, they have been fighting for their freedom to choose whether they want to wear a hijab or not for decades, ever since the 1979 revolution happened in that country.
Yes, it is the right to choice, the right to choose, the right to decide what clothes the woman wants to wear, whether it is Iran or India. The underlying issue that is there is the patriarchal imposition, the imposition by men as to how women's clothing must be, so as to be modest in the eyes of those eyes of the men, because they feel that they are being provoked and they are being tempted and they are being whatever. So that is the crux of the matter. Why is this choice not being given to the woman? Some of them feel that if I wear the hijab, I have access to education, mobility, I feel safe. It is the I, that particular woman who chooses. Now in Iran, they are saying, why are you imposing this? I don't want to wear the hijab. I don't want to cover my head. So why are governments, mostly made up of men, make these decisions and choices for women, our bodies? What is it that what is the fetish that men have that they must rule over women and our bodies, how we look and what we wear? That is the grouse. That is the angst. We do not want men to tell us what to wear, what not to wear. If the woman is comfortable wearing a hijab, so be it. It is her choice. and she doesn't want to wear it, so be it. That is also her choice.
I'm cutting across to Swapnil Kothari as well, who's a lawyer. And Swapnil, I'm going to have this discussion with you in the spirit of Islamic jurisprudence, because this is the Islamic Republic of Iran that we're talking about. And a lot of democratic principles that will apply on the Commonwealth nations or countries which are democracy won't apply here in this case. If you talk about Islamic jurisprudence, whether it's hijab, chador, burqa, niqab, jilbab, all of these are cultural concepts. What the Holy Quran essentially talks about is modest dressing. And out of it, there are various hadiths and interpretations which have really come in. Iran, relatively speaking, is a progressive country in the Muslim world, looking at the kind of education women have had, looking at the kind of participation that they have in public life. This entire issue about whether women should be allowed to choose the kind of dressing that they want to do, what kind of place does it really find in Islamic jurisprudence?
Well, in Islamic jurisprudence, it's some sort of a given. It's from, a patriarchy. It's from, a culture which is monotheistic, meaning that there is only one God. And whatever the God has ordained, that is what you have to follow. And now you see some sort of reprisals in the form of women trying to chop their hair or trying not to wear hijab. And you see those pictures coming across on our television screens. And that is something which, they're trying to fight it out. And it's ironical that today in those countries, women are taking up cudgels against those sort of patriarchal or misogynistic cultures, which they feel so. That's according to them, that is what it is. And today in our country, in a democracy like ours, in a pluralistic democracy like ours, where there is multiplicity of religions and where there is multiple practices of this nature, we are still trying to fight it out for hijab. Now, politics aside, because I believe it's more politics than religion, and more politics than religious freedom, if I may correct myself. And then if you notice that today the assertions which are being made before the Supreme Court were the same assertions that were made before the Karnataka High Court. And those assertions are not going to work out simply because the Supreme Court is going to confirm the order of the Karnataka High Court. And it is going to pass an order which is going to be against people who want to profess or who want to say that hijab is an essential part of a practice to Islam. Because some scholars will say yes, some scholars will say no. But eventually the court will have to go by what Article 25 says and what the reasonable restrictions that are Article 25 are.
Okay.
That is public order and morality.
Let me turn this question to you, Swapnil. And for a moment, I'm going to step aside of the legalese of this entire issue, because you're right. If you go under 25 essential religious practices test and you look at various judgments, well, I think the Puttaswamy judgment will have its own contours. But more importantly, a woman has a right to choose whether she wants to cover her head, whether she wants to take a ghungat, whether she wants to take a hijab, and whether she wants to be, like any other woman, roam in the streets and not be worried about whether she is wearing anything. At the heart of what is happening in Iran is the freedom to choose. Women are not saying that we don't want anybody to wear hijab. Women are saying we will choose whether we want to or we don't want to. And if we don't want to, you can't punish us for wearing or for not wearing.
As well, that's an excellent question. But the point is that is what is there going on in Iran. Here, what the court will try to say is that here it's a question of a school and it's a question of a school uniform. Now, an argument now let's stretch this argument further. Let's say that the Supreme Court rules in favor of the right to choose, as you rightly pointed out, and you're emphasizing on that point that this is a right to choose. I need to wear what I like to wear.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, I will say as a Hindu that I need to practice a ritual before entering the High Court premises or the Supreme Court premises, because according to me, if I perform a puja, I'll do well in my arguments before the court. So I will sit at the gates of the court and I will say that I want to do this and stop the traffic, or I'll say that please wait for 5 minutes. Nothing, the heavens are not going to fall. And take it on ad nauseum, and you will find the courts flooded with this sort of litigation. And this is not the point that the Supreme Court will try to make or will try to entertain at all, because Supreme Court will go simply by the essential practices test, that is one, and two, reasonable restrictions. Because